car behind me is my 2013 Kia Proceed GT that I swapped for a Peugeot 208 GTI.
Mate, you're an absolute legend. I did not expect to come here and go away with that, if I'm honest.
Now, I didn't give any cash on top to seal this deal, and this car is worth around £1,400 more than the Peugeot that I swapped it for. Which, of course, opens the question up to how and why.
Because although this Kia is worth more than the Peugeot, the way it was a fair swap is because this Kia Ceed GT has some of its issues. To start with, it has a misfire on cold start. It has an engine warning light on the dashboard, which after diagnosing the car is actually not linked to the misfire. And the gear shifter is missing a few parts, which makes it very easy to accidentally select reverse while driving.
So I think it's safe to say I've got plenty of issues to take care of on this car to keep me busy, and I have got to fix them and fix them well.
Because once I've fixed all of the issues, I will be swapping this car on because I'm trying to swap my way up to a supercar.
So, to start with, I need to get to the bottom of why this car misfires on cold start. That is an issue that I cannot ignore, and I cannot send this car away with that problem. Now, something in last video we noticed is that pretty much all of the coils that are currently in this car are a different brand. Coil number 1 is a OEM part. That is an original part that's got Kia and Hyundai written on it. So there is potential that that has been in the car since the day it came out of the manufacturer. But something one of you guys has said in the comments that I am going to try now is I'm going to start the car, I'm going to let it misfire, and what I'll do then is I'm going to unplug this coil, number 1, and if nothing happens, then I think that that coil is going to be the culprit and is going to be the reason why we've got a problem. Should we try that? Let's try that.
So what I'm hoping for by doing this is that when I unplug one of these coils, it makes 0 difference, which would then indicate that that coil is actually faulty. And after unplugging each coil one by one, I noticed that each time I did, there was a slight difference in the way that the engine was performing, which then means all coils are okay.
Well, I was hoping that it wasn't going to make any difference whatsoever, but there was a slight difference when I did unplug that coil. But something I have done either way, because someone else is going to be having this car and I want to make sure it is right, is I have gone out and bought 4 brand new coil packs. Now, no, these aren't OEM, but I have been told that the OEM ones are prone to failing. So we've got 4 brand new ones, and we're going to obviously switch them over. I'm still waiting on spark plugs, which will arrive tomorrow. So if I change all of these and it carries on misfiring, then we've got another chance with the spark plugs tomorrow. But for now, let's change these coil packs. And there we go, 4 brand new coils are in. Obviously I know I'm going to have to take these out when I do the spark plugs, but like I say, they are not arriving until tomorrow. So for now, I just want to see if that has maybe made a difference. So I'm going to give the car a few more minutes to just cool down so we can definitely get a cold start again, and then I'll turn it on and see if it misfires. Okay, here we go. Moment of truth. Is it going to misfire? And the answer to that is yes. Damn. Well, even though changing all 4 coils did not work, we obviously have to add that to how much it has cost to fix this car, even though it isn't fixed yet. Now, obviously, I use Motorstock to get all of my car parts, so they did cost me £75 for all 4, which I don't think is bad at all. But obviously, I can't return them now, and I want them to be in there for the next owner anyway. So for now, all we've got to do is wait for the spark plugs to arrive tomorrow, fit them. If that doesn't solve it, then it's going to be definitely something under here, injector related, 100%, and that probably be an indication as to why it smells quite bad when it is misfiring. So yeah, I think we've got a bit more work on our hands.
I guess this is just going to have to be the process of elimination, and we keep replacing parts until one thing makes a difference. And I think it is wise to leave the injectors till last, as that is the most work.
So we are back with 4 brand new spark plugs, of course from Motorstop. We'll add them to the board in a minute. And if I replace all 4 of these and the car is still misfiring, I have still got 2 things to actually test and check before I just cut my losses and say that it is an injector. But there's something that we can do to check which injector it actually is. But for now, let me swap all 4 of these spark plugs and just see. We're just going to test our luck.
So now I've got to take them 4 coils back out to get to the spark plugs that are underneath, and if you've never changed spark plugs on your own on your car, it is probably one of the easiest jobs that you can do by yourself.
That is 4 brand new spark plugs, all installed and all tightened up to spec. Let's see if it misfires. And it's not as bad but it is misfiring. And it smells. Well, we have now changed all 4 spark plugs and we have changed all 4 coils, and the car is still misfiring. So of course we have to add them parts, even though it hasn't fixed the car, to what the total cost of this Kia is. They were £36 again from Motorstop. But that to me just means that the person who is generous enough to swap this car with me in the end doesn't have to worry about spark plugs, and they don't have to worry about coil packs. They should last them a good few years without having to need to replace them.
And although that is great news for the next owner, I'm starting to get a little bit worried myself, because everything we've tried so far has made no difference, and I'm hoping that this problem isn't serious.
Now, before we do carry on with this Kia Ceed GT, I need to jump on my phone and order my next week's worth of food, because I'm starting to run out. And how I'm going to do that is by using HelloFresh. Now, if you're not already familiar with HelloFresh, HelloFresh is a meal kit delivery service that offers meals and groceries delivered straight to your front door, or back door if you've got one. So what I need to do right now is order my next week's worth of food. So all I've got to do is head over to the App Store on my phone and download the HelloFresh app. And once I've done that, I can actually start to build my plan. So it asks me a few questions of what I want from my meals. So because I've put some weight on the past few years, I want something that is going to be calorie smart. And then my preferences, I just want something that is low calorie. And then it asks you what are my goals for HelloFresh, and for me it is eating more wholesome meals. And then it's going to ask for all your details, so remember to put your address in so you can get your meals delivered to your door. Next step is selecting which meals you actually want, and I've got some personal favourites that I couldn't recommend enough. The first of which is pork meatballs in a rich tomato sauce. Next on the list that I prefer to eat on a weekend is the chicken korma style curry. This one actually feels like I've ordered a takeaway, so you can't go wrong with one of them. And then last but not least is one I like to have midweek, and that is the creamy tomato Cajun chicken. They're just 3 of my recommendations that are pretty calorie smart and taste absolutely amazing. And it is as simple as that. So if you guys want to get started with HelloFresh, I will leave the link in the description down below, and you can also use the discount code on screen to get 60% off your first box and free desserts for life. And of course, a massive thank you to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to this Kia.
Back on with the Kia, and before I do dive into checking all of the injectors and any symptoms to do with those, I'm going to actually take the coils out completely while the engine's running, just to see if that makes any difference than just unplugging them, which it didn't, so I'm leaning towards an injector.
The question now is which one, and I think I've got a way of finding out with using this. Let me explain.
If I've got a leaking injector on my hands, that would mean that there is fuel leaking down onto the top of the piston. So when I turn this car on from cold, it is burning that fuel off, which means it is over-fueling. And once it's burned off, that's when the car drops back down and idles absolutely fine. So what I'm doing now is taking the coils out, taking the spark plugs out, and using a bore scope to actually see what is on top of each piston.
So we are starting with, of course, cylinder number 1. Now I'm hoping that there is, which there isn't, that one is dry as a bone.
And after checking cylinders number 2, 3 and 4, they were all dry, which has really confused me because I was actually expecting at least one of them to have fuel sat on top of the piston.
I was really expecting at least one of them pistons to be damp and covered in fuel, which would have just indicated, obviously, we've got a leaking injector. But what I'm seeing on here, there isn't really, there's not really any fuel on there that I can kind of make out. That the only two that look, I mean, that, I don't know what that could be, but it doesn't really look like fuel, does it?
But even though I managed to find no fuel on top of any of the pistons, I'm still not going to rule out that it could be the injectors. I think after I've checked a few more components, it makes sense to take the injectors out and actually go get them tested. But for now, I want to check a couple more bits.
I'm personally at a little bit of a dead end. I seriously cannot figure out why this car is misfiring. But there is a few more things that I can check. One of them, I want to check what the coolant temperature sensor is actually reading inside the car. So I'm going to check the live data and see what that is saying, because if it is reading a lot higher than what it should be, then maybe the car is overfueling to compensate for it being really cold outside, which would then indicate a faulty coolant temperature sensor. So I've got nothing to lose, let's check.
And with the car being stone cold, the engine coolant temperature sensor was reading 48.2 degrees Fahrenheit.
Now, if my calculations are correct, I think that is pretty much what the outside temperature is. 48 degrees Fahrenheit should be probably about, I think, 10 degrees Celsius, if I'm not wrong. Which, yeah, 48.2 degrees Fahrenheit is 9 degrees Celsius. That actually, for a blonde lad, wasn't a bad guess, but clearly that is reading what it should. It's reading almost the outside temperature, so that coolant temperature sensor is definitely okay.
One thing I decided to check after that as well is the ignition time on the live data. I turned the car on while it was misfiring just to see if any of the injection timings were different to the others, which would have then indicated which cylinder the misfire is coming from. But looking at the data, it shows that they are all doing the exact same thing. Some of them are spiking a little bit more than others, but for the most part, they are all pretty much identical.
Well, it's not spark plugs, it's not coil packs, and the injectors seem to be all doing what they should be. So now I'm leaning towards something a little bit more serious, and I've found something that may lean towards worst case scenario. So if I turn the car on, obviously it's not misfiring now because it is fairly warm. If I come over to the engine and undo the oil cap, it is blowing quite hard out of that hole. This might not be good at all. Let me compression test it.
This could actually be quite bad. Everything I've done so far hasn't solved the problem, and if I've got low compression on one of the cylinders, this engine is going to need a full rebuild. So in hopes that it isn't the worst case scenario, I'm going to get the compression tester out, take out the coils and the spark plugs, and hope for the best.
First things first, shout out to Ben Axon, because he is pretty much telling me everything that I should be kind of looking out for. So while I'm doing this compression test on all 4 cylinders, I should be getting somewhere between 156 psi to 178 psi. So if all 4 of these cylinders is between 150 and 175, then we should be all good. Anything lower, then we've got a big job on our hands. but let's find out.
Time for the moment of truth. All I've got to do now is screw in my compression tester and crank the engine to find out what PSI I am getting from the reader.
Okay, cylinder 1, ready to go. I'm going to crank it about 20 times with my foot flat on the accelerator. Right, that was 20 times. Let's see what we are at. So we are at probably about 100 and what would you say that is? Let's go 165 PSI. Okay, that is a good start. That is a good start. Let me get this switched over. Make sure to release all the air. Let me get this switched over to cylinder number 2. Come on, engine, you're not kaput yet. Good old Korean engineering. Surely you're not gone yet. Cylinder number 2. Okay, a little bit higher. That one is 175 on the dot. Cylinder number 3. Is about the same. I'd say 165. Last but not least, cylinder number 4. Please don't be down. Here we go. Moment of truth. No, we're okay. We are okay on all 4 cylinders. That one is probably around 170 PSI. Yes. Yes. 170 PSI. Right. At least we know now that it isn't worst case scenario. That is pretty even along the whole board with the maximum of 10 PSI between them all, which is pretty good for an engine. So it is definitely not a kaput engine, and it isn't either cracked sleeve or something like that. So that is really good news.
And even though that is great news, we are still nowhere closer to finding out why this car is actually misfiring, but at least that rules out that the engine is going to need a rebuild. So I guess we've got to carry on digging.
But with that being said, I was actually sending one of my friends, shout out to Mark, a video of what the car was actually doing. And at that time, I was looking at the live data on the short-term and long-term fuel trim. And something I noticed while the car was misfiring is the short-term fuel trim was seriously high. I mean, like in the 20s, 25. So that would indicate that it is over-fueling and running really rich, which would mean, obviously, the spark plugs would go black, which they are. But something very important that we actually noticed in that video is this. If I actually just turn the car on, can you hear the high-pitched noise? Now, I don't know how well that came across on camera, but there's a really high-pitched noise which we are thinking might be an air leak. So before we do jump in to taking them injectors out, I'm going to get this car smoke tested to eliminate that. And how we are going to smoke test it is by using this smoke tester machine that, shout out to Ampy from NJW Breakers, has let me borrow so we can further diagnose this car. This, if you don't know what it is quite literally like a fog machine for people that don't know, and you put it into the intake system, and what it will do is it will push smoke around the intake system and around all the vacuum system, and if you see any smoke coming out, that obviously means air would be able to get out of where the smoke is coming from, which means you have an air leak or a vacuum leak or a boost leak or something like that. So let's smoke test this car.
Again, this is just the process of elimination. Before I do take them injectors off, I'm going to try everything that I can to make sure that when I do take the injectors out, it is actually going to fix the car. I'm now going to remove the top of the air intake so I can get this smoke tester down into the air intake pipe.
And now we wait for all of that smoke to go through all of the intake system, and all we've got to do now is check to see if we can actually see any smoke. Well, so far we've not got any leaks coming from anywhere, but the back of the intake pipe, which you can clearly see, is actually coming out quite rapid. Whether that's enough to cause that issue and that misfire, I don't think so, but apart from that, it's not coming from anywhere else. The intercooler down here, there's no smoke coming from anywhere but at the back there, which in some ways I was hoping that maybe we did have a pretty big vacuum leak somewhere, but the only one I can see is that. I don't know whether that had caused the misfire or not, to be honest, but it's definitely leaking. It kind of leaves me with one other option, and that is to just take the inlet manifold off and get to these injectors, get them tested and see maybe if that is the issue. It has to be something, I just haven't found what that is yet. It's just so bizarre that the car is not throwing a code, so the car doesn't even know that it's misbehaving, and I have tried almost everything now except them injectors. So I think it's time we take this inlet manifold off and get to them. I have also ordered a new air filter because that one is disgusting. So yeah.
So I'm going to get this inlet manifold off, and luckily for me, this engine is pretty easy to work on. There's a few bolts holding the inlet manifold to the engine block, there's a coolant hose underneath and a coolant hose on the right hand side that I'm getting off now. And of course, I've got to undo the air intake pipe that goes to the throttle body.
I think we are out. Boom, there we go. One inlet manifold off, and by removing that entire inlet manifold, that has gave us access to all of this down here. Obviously that is the ports, and just below that is the fuel rail, and just below that is the fuel injectors. So I'm going to unplug what I assume is the fuel pressure sensor. If that wants to come out, I'm going to unplug the fuel pressure sensor, unbolt the fuel line, and then start undoing the fuel rail and pull it all out, and hopefully the injectors come with it. If not, I'll just have to pull them out from the head.
And once again, Kia make everything really accessible and really easy. So to get this fuel rail off, there's the 4 bolts, unbolt it from the fuel line, and then I can unplug that pressure sensor and pull the fuel rail off.
They don't look very clean at all. There is a lot of dirt and gunk on them. Obviously, I was having a little bit of trouble getting the fuel rail off, and this injector has stayed in the head. Look at it down there, and I think that one's going to be the worst of them all because I've been having issues, I think, with number 1. But yeah, all I've got to do now is just get that injector out, then I'm going to just take this whole assembly to get tested. Luckily the injectors are only about 45 quid, so I'm hoping it only needs the one, but end of the day, if this needs all 4, then we will put all 4 in, because whoever swaps with me, I want it to be good. So yeah, let me get this last injector out and then we can go get them tested.
This is pretty much last resort. I've checked spark and I've checked ignition. The only thing left that we need to make sure is working properly is fuel. So we're going to take these injectors to a place called Artec Performance, who've got plenty of injector testing machines that can test these injectors for me. So we're going to get them plugged in and get them tested.
Is this a moment of truth?
That's it.
Uh-oh.
Let's have a look at them. So that's your idle.
Okay.
High idle. Don't look too bad.
Notice anything?
Nothing major, no.
No?
No. We will do a static flow test. That'll tell us if there's any underperforming.
Yeah.
Do that test. Basically stick some open for 15 seconds. And if there's any damage on the injector,
You can see what level each one is.
pretty much.
They're about alright, aren't they?
Yeah, they look bang on.
If this ain't the case, I honestly do not know what it is. Oh no.
Right, we'll put them in for cleaning.
Yeah.
Let's see from there what they're like after.
Cool.
And of course, my luck being my luck, the injectors were absolutely fine. But while they're getting cleaned, here's an example of some poor injectors. As you can see, none of them are really the same.
As of now, there is not really anything wrong with them injectors. Couple of little bits, but nothing that we think is going to make a massive difference. But we did get them cleaned, and a massive thank you to the lads at Artec for doing that. All we can do now is go back, get them in the car, and maybe it's made a difference. The problem is so intermittent that maybe I'll be lucky and just getting them injectors cleaned will be the answer to my prayers. But if not, well, I really don't know. I've got to look into PCV, fuel pump, stuff like that. So, well, if this hasn't fixed it, we've got a lot more digging to do. But I'll leave Artec's link in the description.
It may sound really stupid, but I was actually hoping that one or more of these injectors were absolutely knackered, and it was very clear that one of them was underperforming, but they were all doing what they should be. So I'm going to get the injectors back on the fuel rail, back into the engine, and then of course refit the inlet manifold. And maybe, just maybe, it's made a difference. And that is the inlet manifold back on. To be honest, it was really easy. Everything kind of just stays sat in the place that it wants to go, so it was easy to remember where all the plugs go, where all the little coolant hoses go. One thing we have got that has arrived from Motorstock is the new air filter, so we can put that in there. That is now a job that needed to be taken care of. Hopefully all the injectors are in place properly. I literally just put them back on how I took them off, so if anything catches fire, then it catches fire. It's probably the best thing for this car at the moment, but I'm just going to put the airbox back on, put the Jubilee clamp round the intake hose, and then we'll turn it on. I know it is going to run like crap because obviously we've had the injectors out, but I'll prime it as much as I can and we'll go from there. And before I turn it on, I'm just going to make sure to top up the coolant that we lost by taking that inlet manifold off. And now it's time for the moment of truth. I'm going to try and prime this fuel pump as much as possible so we can get a generic cold start without it being due to the fact that we took the inlet and the injectors out. So once I've primed it a load of times, it's time to turn it on.
Well, everything seems fine. Clutch down. And it is not starting. It didn't misfire. No, no, I'm not getting, no, no, no. I'm not getting excited just yet. I'm gonna let it cool down again. Now obviously that fuel pump is primed and the car can just start. I'm gonna just let it sit for about an hour and then I'll turn it on again. If it doesn't misfire then that is the problem solved. No, I'm not getting my hopes up. All right, it's been long enough now to the point where I know that it would definitely misfire if it's not fixed. So, ignition on. It's not misfiring. It is absolutely fine. There is no way. What?
But before I ruled the problem as fixed, I decided to leave the car overnight and try again the day after.
It is now the next day because I wanted to make sure and be 100% certain that we are getting a complete cold start. So it's been about 12 hours since I have touched this car. If I turn it on now and it doesn't misfire, then we have actually solved the problem. Right. Ignition on. It is still misfiring. Well, that hasn't worked, and honestly, I don't have a clue what else it could be. I really do not have a clue why it's misfiring now.
And another thing that actually happened just before filming this video that I want you guys to know is the engine light and the engine code that we did have on the car decided that it just wanted to disappear and hasn't come back since.
So spark, fueling and ignition and compression are all fine on this car, and with it only being an intermittent issue on the cold start, we know that something isn't working as it should on that initial first start up, which we've proven everything else is. But there is one thing that we haven't actually checked, and that is something that's not actually to do with the engine itself. It's actually ECU related. Now, for those keen eye viewers that would have watched the video when I went to pick this car up from Calvin's Car Diary, some of you actually noticed that when I first showed you guys this car, there was actually a red Kia badge stuck over this badge that is currently here, and I actually took it off in the video, and a few of you did actually notice, so fair play for that. And if we come to the front of the car, we can actually see that someone in the past has sprayed this GT badge in red. It is now all chipping off and looks a lot worse than it originally did, so someone's definitely had a play or a mess around with that. And the same goes for the rear. Someone has sprayed this badge. So, safe to say, at some point in this car's life, someone has started to modify it, which is now leading me to think that maybe this car has previously been remapped, and maybe they have took a modification off, or something has been added, or the map isn't great, which has meant that the cold start isn't getting the right values and is just messed up in the actual tune of the car. I have checked everything, and there is nothing else I can actually check on this car except for the actual tune. So I think that is the next option that we need to eliminate. Another thing I have noticed on this car, if we have a look at the number plates, it actually says Hilton Garage. Now, Hilton Garage is a place I actually used to deliver to at my old job. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ring Hilton and ask them on what mileage they sold this Kia and how long ago they sold it and if it had any running issues. Now, Hilton Garage are a retail garage, so they wouldn't sell cars with issues. So this has happened since the car was sold to Hilton Car Garage. So there's no harm in ringing them and asking.
Thank you for calling Hilton Garage Car Supermarket. Please be aware all phone calls are recorded for training and monitoring purposes. Please dial option 1 for sales, option 2 for service and aftercare, or if you know the extension number of...
And after talking to the helpful lady at Hilton Car Garage, she was actually able to give me quite a lot of information about this Kia.
Shout out to Hilton Car Garage. Well, at least now I know this car got sold 5 years ago in 2019, which has opened up the fact that in the last 5 years this could have had a tune. If it had have been sold maybe last month by Hilton and the problems occurred since, then it might just be, well, I don't know, but at least now I know there is a big chance and at least 30,000 miles in 5 years that this car might have had a tune. So obviously we're going to call Paul from Sheffield Remapping and we're going to take a look at this ECU.
And after a quick conversation with Paul from Sheffield Remapping, he said that I could take the ECU to him tonight, the time being 7 o'clock, so shout out to Paul. So we've got to take the ECU out of the car because when I get back, I want to make sure that it is a cold start again so I can check for that misfire. To get to the ECU, I'm going to remove the battery to reveal the 3 bolts holding it in, unplug it from the main harness, and then I can remove the ECU completely.
One ECU removed, and it is in fact a Bosch.
So now I'm going to head over an hour and a half to the other side of Sheffield so Paul from Sheffield Remapping can plug this ECU into his laptop and actually tell me what tune is on this car. And once the laptop had finished verifying if it's stock or not, the result was what I didn't want, which is that this ECU is on the standard map. But thank you to Sheffield Remapping for doing this last minute for me. I will leave their link in the description. Now I'm just going to get the ECU back in the car with a heavy heart because I was genuinely hoping to find the issue. I'm almost at a lost cause now and not sure what to check next. One thing I did ask Paul is if he could just map the O2 sensor out of the car in case that is giving a false reading. So there is a little bit of hope that maybe it won't misfire. But again, I'm not getting my hopes up.
Here we go again. I'm not hopeful. I really don't know what is going on with this car, but it's going to be a definite cold start. So still misfiring. It is still misfiring.
And just as I was about to give up all hope, I got a message from Ewan at Woodborough Garage telling me to check one last thing, which is the VVT solenoid.
To eliminate that there is anything wrong with that, I'm simply going to unplug it like that and we're going to start the car. If it misfires, then we know that that's absolutely fine and that's something else we can tick off the list of what it could potentially be. So, I'm not hopeful, but let's try it. That's not misfiring. No. That's not misfiring.
No way.
VVT solenoid. There is no way on this planet that has worked. If after all that time, money and sleepless nights, it turns out to just be a faulty VVT solenoid, then honestly, I will be so happy. But what we should probably do while we're letting the car cool down for another cold start is take this solenoid out, and if it is all gunked up on the mesh strainer, then I am certain that this is going to be the problem. So when I pull this out, I'm hoping that it is all dirty. That way we should be able to clean it, put it back in the car, wait until tomorrow for another proper cold start, and if it doesn't misfire, then that has definitely solved it. Let's get it out. Please be all gunked up. It is actually all gunked up. I don't know if you can see that middle strainer just there under the light. That has got so much gunk all over it, and even a big kind of shard of plastic. That is definitely dirty and shouldn't be that dirty. Guys, we literally may have found the problem, and it is thanks to Ewan at Woodborough Garage. Right, I'm going to get a toothbrush and try and clean that up the best I can.
Now I'm just going to do my best to give this as good of a clean as I can using a bit of brake cleaner and a toothbrush.
That is as clean as I am going to get it, so all we've got to do now is reinstall that 10mm bolt and wait for a cold start. Well, the time is currently 10 o'clock at night, which means this car has been sat for just over 5 hours. So this should be a proper cold start, and if that has fixed it, then we can get the next few bits done in the next video and swap this car on for the next car, which is the best one yet. So let's see. Please, car, please. Please. Still misfiring. Maybe not. I literally don't know. I don't know. Well, this video, at the end, what you're watching right now, I was hoping to be able to actually swap this car on. But, as you've seen, I haven't got to the bottom of why it is misfiring. It has to be something. Like, there isn't any way that it's just, oh, it just misfires and that's it. The engine has got good compression. The coils are good. The spark plugs are good. The injectors are good. It has to be something that I am just not finding, or something that I am missing. And I wasn't even going to upload until I'd got this car fixed, but I guess you guys would be disappointed if I don't upload, and there's people that are going to be disappointed that I've not got to the bottom of it. But the reason I didn't upload last week is simply because I wanted to get the car done in one video, and I was confident that I was going to find the problem, and well, I haven't a clue. I don't know what else I can check, so I think the best thing for me to do is ask you guys, what do you think this could be? What have I done that maybe you would have done different, or what's something I haven't checked that you would have checked, to get to the bottom of this car. This is just part of swapping cars with issues. I knew doing this series I was going to get cars that are going to test my knowledge of cars and test my mechanical skills, etc, etc. But the good thing about all of this is I am learning along the way, and that is the most important thing. I'm learning, I'm gaining knowledge, I'm understanding how things work, and that stuff you can't put a price on. So I'm not annoyed that I haven't got to the bottom of it. It's a little bit frustrating, but like I say, I'm learning. The next step for this car, I don't know. I actually do not know where we go from here. This might be one of them cars that I am going to have to reach into my pockets and just keep replacing sensors, keep replacing everything until one thing makes a difference. And like the map sensors, they're 45 quid each. There's 2 on this car. That's £100 there, but that's £100 I'm going to have to fork out to eliminate that, if that makes sense. Or if anyone watching this video has got a Kia Ceed GT that I could kind of borrow and just swap parts, and as soon as I swap one part and it stops doing the misfire, I know that that's the part I need to buy. I don't know what is best to do with this car at the moment. I am not going to give up. I will find the issue, and as much as I want to find it myself, maybe I have to call in some help, some professional help, some professional diagnostics, and someone that has been in the game a lot longer than me that could diagnose this car and tell me what is wrong with it. I do like to do things myself, but there are some things I'm willing to accept that I just can't do. And so far, I don't know. I don't know. The problem's there. It's just finding it, and I'm running out of things to find. But yeah, bit of a annoying one, really. I know I said it wasn't annoying. The only annoying part for me is the content I wanted to put out, fixing the whole entire car. We've still got the gear stick problem to fix, and this car now needs a service on the dashboard as well. So the only annoying part for me is I wanted this video to be a completion and we can move on. But again, I'm going to come across problems that I can't solve myself. So yeah, guys, we'll end this one with help me if you have any idea what this could be. Bearing in mind, it only does it on cold start. I can turn the car on, it will misfire. I can literally turn it off and back on, and it will run absolutely fine until the next day. So whatever the issue is, it is so intermittent that this car runs absolutely fine apart from that initial start up. Like, that is how small this issue is, but I just haven't found it yet. So again, any ideas, please let me know in the comment section below. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment and subscribe. We will fix this car. I will see you in the next video. Peace.
You wear a hat they call dad. Me, I'm the dad in the hat. You just like clubbing and clothes. Me, I like afternoon naps. 3, I be missed for the road. My oldest like counting racks. My middle one, she's in a dirt bike. My youngest is just like a mama.